I have wanted to visit Utqiagvik, Alaska for many years, and in the summer of 2024, I finally got my chance. After arriving at Ted Stevens International Airport, I was ready to board an Alaska Airlines flight to Barrow. The airport is still called Barrow despite the city changing its name in 2016 from Barrow to Utqiagvik. Alaska Airlines has one direct daily flight from Anchorage to Barrow. Shortly after boarding, the plane sped down the runway and I was on my way to Utqiagvik. The flight from Anchorage to Barrow is on an Alaska Airlines 737. It takes about 1 hour and 40 minutes to complete the flight. The flight was uneventful, but my excitement started to rise as the plane began its descent into Utqiagvik. During the last 20 minutes of the flight, I was treated to great views of the Arctic tundra, and eventually the Arctic Ocean came into view. Shortly after that, I saw some of the dirt roads of Utqiagvik as the wheels touched down on the runway just a few moments later. I was extremely pleased to be in Utqiagvik, Alaska, the northernmost city in the United States. After taxiing, we disembarked the plane via stairs. Despite being late June, I was greeted with upper 30-degree temperatures and a strong blowing wind. My hotel, the King Eider Inn, was located within a 2-minute walk of the airport. I quickly checked into the hotel and found my room. When entering the King Eider Inn, all guests must take off their shoes in the lobby. My room was a standard room with 2 double beds, a small table, TV, and blackout curtains. There were only 3 hotels in Utqiagvik, and I chose this one as it had the most affordable room. I had been waiting for years to visit Utqiagvik, and I was quick to get out and start exploring. I really didn't have any idea where I was going, so I started walking towards the Arctic Ocean and the Top of the World Hotel. Pretty quickly into my walk, I came across one of the inland lagoons. These lagoons are saltwater, and they separate the 2 main parts of Barrow. If it had been winter, I probably would have just walked across the lagoon, but it was summer and the lagoon had begun to thaw. So I followed the dirt path, went through an amusing tunnel that went under a building, and continued following the lagoon towards the Top of the World Hotel. After crossing a wooden bridge, the end of the lagoon came into view, and I could see the maroon and blue colors of the Top of the World Hotel. After looking back at where I had come from, I continued walking around the lagoon. I finally came upon one of the main roads, and after crossing the road, I was at the Top of the World Hotel, one of the other accommodations in Utqiagvik, Alaska. Just behind the Top of the World Hotel is the iconic Whalebone Arch, one of the best and most known sites in Utqiagvik, Alaska. The Whalebone Arch is made out of the jawbones of a bowhead whale. Next to the Whalebone Arch is an umiak, a whaling boat, as well as the skull of a bowhead whale. The Whalebone Arch perfectly frames the vast emptiness of the surrounding Arctic Ocean. When you walk past the Whalebone Arch, you are at Barrow Beach, and you can walk the shoreline of the Arctic Ocean. As I looked out into the water filled with icebergs, only 1,300 miles separated me from the North Pole. I would return to the shoreline of the Arctic Ocean many times during my visit, eventually taking the polar plunge, which will be later in this video. At this point, though, I left the beach and I began wandering, and I came across the northernmost post office in the United States. Being my first day, I had not really learned the lay of the land yet, so I continued walking up one of the dirt roads. Utqiagvik only has dirt roads with the exception of one small area of paved road right next to the airport. Eventually the road curved and I was back at the Arctic Ocean. Instead of retracing my steps, I decided to walk back on the Arctic shoreline. About 20 minutes later, I was back near the Top of the World Hotel, and shortly after that, I was on one of the main roads. It was now time to find something to eat. During my visit to Utqiagvik, I would try the cuisine at almost all of the city's restaurants. On my way to find something to eat, I came across the Presbyterian Church. There's a smaller whalebone arch in front of the Presbyterian Church, as well as a sign that shows the distances to important places. I looked back at the Arctic Ocean and then continued walking. The area I was in now was one of the commercial areas in Utqiagvik. In addition to having a Wells Fargo bank, there are also a few restaurants in this area. I chose to eat at Osaka Restaurant. Osaka Restaurant serves a variety of Japanese and Chinese cuisine. After looking at the menu, I ordered the Mongolian beef and was happy to begin with a piping hot bowl of soup. The Mongolian beef was excellent, and I would eat at Osaka Restaurant one additional time during my trip. As I walked back to my hotel, I passed the Ace Hardware. Just before my hotel, I came across the Wiley Post Will Rogers Memorial. I figured that would be a good first stop for tomorrow. Moments later, I walked past the airport and then was at my hotel. After a good night's sleep, it was time to begin day 2 in Utqiagvik, Alaska. The weather on day 2 was much better and there was quite a bit of blue sky. I began day 2 visiting the Wiley Post Will Rogers Memorial. After spending a few minutes at the memorial, I decided to head back towards the Whalebone Arch in the Top of the World Hotel. I wanted to visit the Arctic shoreline once again, as the weather was much clearer and I thought I'd get a much better view of the Arctic Ocean. I took a different route, which went by a children's playground. This route eventually hooked up with one of the main roads, and I didn't have to meander my way around the lagoon. I went by a spillway where water comes in from the ocean into the lagoon. This shows why the lagoon is made of salt water. As I continued onward, I noticed that in front of the Top of the World Hotel there was a large group of people. Apparently, it was the annual whaling festival. As the entire town was at the whaling festival, I had the entire beach to myself. I would try to take some video of the sun every few hours to show how it circles around the horizon. Unfortunately, clouds would eventually make this impossible. I left the beach and went on to my next destination, the grocery store.
So one of the things is that all of the food that is delivered here has to be flown in. So you're going to see some of the highest grocery prices that you've ever seen.
As you look at these prices, I want to explain why certain items are more expensive. First, everything is flown in, and heavy items, or items that take up a lot of space on the plane, cost more to ship. Frozen items are especially expensive as they have to be kept frozen throughout the entire shipping process. What all this means is that residents of Utqiagvik have the most expensive groceries in the United States. It was almost unbelievable looking at the prices. I had read that it cost upwards of $500 a week to buy just the essentials in Utqiagvik. Add a few sweets and treats, and grocery bills can easily surpass $1,000 per week for a family of 5. Look at the price of the snack-sized Cheetos, $5.09, or $4.99 for a single bottle of Diet Coke. I did not make any purchases during my trip to the grocery store in Utqiagvik. After leaving the grocery store, I came across one of the town's only gas stations. Gas in Utqiagvik is $6.89 per gallon. You can see here, for $20, they got only 2.899 gallons. Located next to the gas station is one of the marinas. This is an area where locals can put their boat into the Arctic Ocean. I decided to walk back towards the Top of the World Hotel alongside the Arctic shoreline. This part of the shoreline of the Arctic Ocean was completely void of people, and I had the entire beach to myself. It was just me and some jellyfish. Unfortunately, quite a few of them were deceased. This one here, though, was definitely alive. The Arctic Ocean beach is quite different from the white sand beaches of the Caribbean Sea. The shoreline is covered in black gravel and small rocks, not much larger than grains of sand. One of the things that you have to watch out for in Utqiagvik are polar bears. Thankfully, these were not polar bear tracks. I arrived back at the location where I had been videoing the sun, and it was at a little bit of a different angle. Then, as I began to walk back to my hotel, I was shocked at how cloudy and how foggy it had become.
So it's about 9:45 p.m. and this is as foggy as it's been so far. It seems like midnight sun is often kind of blacked out by the fog. Hopefully it'll clear up a little bit. I'm gonna go get something to eat at one of the 5 or so restaurants here in town. Most of the restaurants are open late, with a couple of them staying open till 1 or 2 a.m.
After sampling the Asian and Japanese cuisine of Osaka restaurant, I decided it was time to check out the Italian scene. I walked through the foggy streets towards Mario's Pizza. Mario's Pizza was located on the far west end of town, up against the Arctic Ocean. As I arrived at Mario's Pizza, I noticed that directly across the street was a park. The sign for the park mentioned that there might even be a chance of seeing a snowy owl. Well, I really wanted to see a snowy owl. It would have to wait until after dinner. Mario's Pizza has a variety of pizzas, sandwiches, burgers, and other Italian dishes. I ended up going with a sausage and pepperoni pizza. After dinner, it was time to explore the nearby park. The sign asks people to only walk on the boardwalk so they don't cause erosion to the area. I came across a smaller whalebone arch as well as the Funakoshi Memorial. While it wasn't a snowy owl, I did see a small bird on top of the memorial. I really enjoyed this park as it provided an elevated view of the Arctic Ocean. The view was especially helpful for watching the floating sea ice. I would visit this beach later on my final full day in Utqiagvik to take the polar bear plunge. But right now, I was fascinated by the moving sea ice. Here is a video sped up about 8 times real speed. You can see that the sea ice is definitely flowing. Once again, it was incredibly foggy. I worked my way back to my hotel with hopes of being able to see the midnight sun. Here's some commentary from my walk back to the hotel.
So it is about 11 p.m. I'm walking back to my hotel. I'm going to go out and check out the midnight sun here in a little bit. I want to check the weather. You'll notice it's quite foggy. I'm hoping it'll clear up a little bit, but it seems every evening that the fog rolls in. There is no cell phone service in Barrow unless you have AT&T. I have Verizon, which I can make an emergency call if I need to, but I'm pretty much on Wi-Fi. So I'm gonna head back to my hotel for a minute here, plug into Wi-Fi, check a couple things, and then we'll go check out the midnight sun. So it is 12:22 in the morning, and obviously it is still bright here in Barrow, Alaska. I'll show you on my phone. Should be able to see that it's after midnight. This is the land of the 24-hour sun. Even though it's quite foggy right now, I'm hoping it's going to clear up, but it's not showing too many signs of it. But we're going to walk down to the Arctic Ocean anyway, because how many chances do you have to see the Arctic Ocean at midnight? And I might be the only one that thinks this is really cool, but yes, it is after midnight, and the sun is still up in the sky here in Barrow, Alaska. This is what they call the midnight sun above the Arctic Circle, which is 66.5 degrees north. The sun does not set for at least one day in the summer, so we are experiencing that right now. They experience that for about 6 weeks in Barrow, and then in the winter they experience the same thing except the opposite. They get about 60 days of darkness.
The fog became so bad that I could barely see in front of me. Thankfully, I'd already learned the way from my hotel to the Top of the World Hotel, the Arctic Ocean, and the iconic whalebone arch.
So this is the midnight sun here in Barrow, Alaska. You can see on my phone that it is 12:38 in the morning.
I also noticed there was a lot more sea ice than there had been the day before. Apparently all that ice that had been moving had been trapped along the shoreline. I walked out onto the sea ice, but don't fear, I was never in any danger. If I had fallen in, the only thing that would have occurred is I would have had some wet shoes.
I am here on the Arctic Ocean beach in Barrow, Alaska. It is the time of the midnight sun, or the 24-hour sun. It's about 1 in the morning here. A little foggy, but the sun is still clearly up. One kind of cool thing here, the ice seems to be moving. None of this ice was here when I walked by this afternoon. I'll show you, the ice is moving.
Hopefully you could clearly see that the ice was moving and getting trapped up along the Arctic shoreline. There was quite a bit more ice than there was before. The ice wouldn't be there forever though, as it was clearly beginning to melt. I put my GoPro in the sand and took this time lapse here showing the ice moving. It was then time to continue towards the iconic whalebone arch for one of the highlights of my trip, standing under the whalebone arch in the midnight sun.
It is about 1:45 in the morning. I'm here in Barrow, Alaska, land of the 24-hour summer sun, and I am standing in front of the whalebone arch. Beach is one of Barrow's top landmarks. It sits here right on Barrow Beach and the Arctic Ocean. It's a little hard to see the ocean right now because it is foggy.
The fog had gotten so bad that I decided it was time to go back to my hotel and get some sleep. I returned back to my accommodations at about 4 a.m. After sleeping in until early afternoon, I took it easy for a while before deciding to do the polar bear plunge. I walked past the closed Arctic Hotel as well as the Utqiagvik fire station.
So I am here in Barrow, Alaska, and I'm about to do the polar plunge. It's going to more likely be the polar wade out, but you can see I've already got my feet here in the Arctic Ocean. Hey, this is as deep as I am going to go. The water is very cold. But I can now say I've done it.
With the beach to myself, I spent the rest of the day relaxing, setting up for a final day in Utqiagvik.
It is my last day here in Barrow, Alaska, and the fog has finally lifted, so it's going to be a great day. It's clear blue sky. I'll show you around. One thing about the 24-hour sun is the sun kind of goes in a circle, so it just rotates 360 degrees. It never actually sets. It does get a little lower on the horizon around midnight. Those buildings over there weren't even visible. So I'm excited that I've got about 6 hours before I have to go to the airport. Everything's going to look different without the fog.
As I was walking by the airport, the non-direct Alaska Airlines flight came into land. This flight travels from Anchorage to Prudhoe Bay before continuing on to Barrow.
So this is one of my favorite viewpoints in Barrow. It's directly across from Mario's Pizza. There's a little park here, and this is one spot where you're above the Arctic Ocean and you get a beautiful view. And this is the first time since I've been here that it's been pretty clear. It's been foggy most of the time, so I was really glad I was able to take in this amazing view.
As I was leaving, one of the trucks came by that waters the streets of Utqiagvik. This helps keep the dust down. I continued walking towards the main commercial area of Utqiagvik, walking by once again the Wells Fargo Bank. Since it was a beautiful day, I decided to head back to the Arctic Ocean shoreline and the whalebone arch. I figured I had seen it in the fog, and now I wanted to see it with beautiful blue sky in the background. Here's some live commentary from one of my favorite places in Utqiagvik.
So you can see the difference a clear day makes. Remember when I was out here for the midnight sun, you couldn't see the ocean at all, and now it's a nice clear day. I'll step back here out of the picture and you can clearly see the ocean now from the famous whalebone arch.
One of the last places I wanted to visit in Utqiagvik was the Iñupiat Heritage Center, but there was one other destination that I wanted to explore first.
So this is what they refer to as the beach road. It's a road that follows the Arctic Ocean up to Point Barrow. Non-members of the UIC lands organization cannot go all the way up to Point Barrow. You have to pay a fee to go on the native lands. I just talked to a police officer. I wanted to walk up to the football field, but he said there's been a polar bear sighting up there a couple times in the last week, so he would definitely not recommend walking up there. The football field is about 3 miles up this road, so I'm gonna go back into town and see if I can get a taxi driver to drive me up there, let me look for 10 minutes, and then take me back. But we'll see if that's possible or not. But we are gonna walk out here on the beach.
I was unable to find a taxi that would take me to the football field, but I did enjoy some more time walking along the shoreline of the Arctic Ocean. This footage is obviously sped up, but it shows the vast emptiness of the Arctic beaches in Utqiagvik and how I had the entire area to myself. After a bit of backtracking, I ended up at the Iñupiat Heritage Center. The admission fee to enter the museum was $10. Utqiagvik's soul is deeply connected to the Iñupiat people, who have thrived in this harsh climate for over 1,000 years. The Iñupiat Heritage Center offers a fascinating glimpse into their remarkable way of life. It was fascinating learning about the Iñupiat people, and I marveled at their intricate whalebone art and traditional crafts. As I left the Iñupiat Heritage Center, I followed a different route which took me past one of the inland lagoons. Here's some live commentary from this part of my trip.
Standing here inland, this is one of the many lagoons. I believe these are all saltwater lagoons. I know there is one freshwater lake, but I believe that's further inland.
This route took me through some parts of Utqiagvik that I had not visited yet. One interesting sight on this route was the local elementary school. Just in front of the elementary school is the town's only stoplight, which allows elementary students to safely cross the street to get to school. I also came across Utqiagvik City Hall, where the mayor's office is located. In front of City Hall is a statue dedicated to members of the Alaska Territorial Guard. From City Hall, I walked past the studios of the local radio station, KBRW 680 AM. Well, I didn't get to see Barrow's football field. I did walk by the bus depot and Barrow High School. Barrow High School is the home of the Whalers. A few minutes later, I would be back near the airport and my hotel to grab my luggage.
And we have come back pretty much to the entrance to my hotel. It was a great last day here in Barrow, Alaska. I'm going to relax for half an hour, 45 minutes or so before I head over to the airport for my flight to Anchorage.
Within the hour, I was through security at Barrow Airport. As I boarded my flight back to Anchorage, I stopped to think about how lucky I was to be able to experience the beauty and culture of Utqiagvik, Alaska.
From the whalebone arch here in Barrow, Alaska, it's 2 a.m. in the land of the midnight sun at the top of the world. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. This is Buzz signing off. Happy travels.